Hey there, it's Matthew Blades, and welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. So let me just give you a little bit of the lay of the land as to what's going to happen on today's podcast, because we've got two guests that are going to make an appearance on the show. First up, we're going to sit down with Ray Brejcha, who's an executive coach, a mentor, and a trusted advisor. He's a psychedelic guide for high performers, and just a few weeks ago, I took part in his retreat. Him and a guy named Pete led a beautiful microdose of San Pedro, and it was an incredible experience, as you're getting ready to hear in this particular podcast. And then I thought it would be really valuable to bring in another guy who was also on that journey and get his perspective. So sit back and enjoy a 55-minute conversation with the three of us.
Looking for no bullshit conversation about mental health? Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
What is getting ready to happen here today? Well, I don't know. And that's kind of the fun part about it. The guy that's on the screen to the right, if you happen to be watching the YouTube version of this, is Ray Brejcha. And I met him just last week. In fact, our worlds just collided, I want to say 2 weeks ago, this past Monday. Doesn't that sound right?
That sounds correct, yeah.
Yeah. I was interviewing a woman named Brooke Beardall, who you guys will hear on this podcast in an upcoming episode. And at the end of our conversation, I was talking to her about a men's retreat. And I said, let me know if you ever hear about a really cool men's retreat that's going on. And she said, well, as a matter of fact, my buddy Ray has got one coming up this Saturday in California. And hook, line, and sinker, man. Everything about what I read sounded exactly like what I was looking for. And the experience was exactly what I had hoped that it would be. It was the way that I'll explain it to you, Ray, and this is a compliment, is that I felt very complete. After the experience was done, I was content. I felt like I had done the journey that I needed, that I wanted. It was really helpful. And so first and foremost, thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad you made it. It was such a really cool experience that Brooke connected us, and then we had that conversation. It's like, of course we needed to meet. So it just really made sense.
So you describe yourself as an executive coach, mentor, trusted advisor. You, like a lot of people right now, are in that period of your life where you're making a shift. You used to do one thing to fill up your days. You were in Silicon Valley and you had a big role out there. And I can imagine that grind was pretty substantial. Can you tell me, as we get into this conversation, what happened that made you decide I need a shift in the way that I'm living my life?
Well, that's a question we probably don't have time for, but in that particular situation, it was COVID. And then I had, at the same time, the shelter in place happened in California. So we were locked in. And at that time, I realized that my 10-year marriage was time to go in a different direction. So I had that heart to heart with my ex-wife in a very collaborative, loving way. I just let her know that this is no longer something I want to keep moving forward with. And then, no kidding, 2 weeks later, this startup, this unicorn, that raised $800 million, had put a lump sum in my checking account on Saturday. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think this means I got a severance package. So Monday, I found out that they laid off 12% of the workforce. So pandemic, shelter in place with a woman who I just asked for a divorce. And now I've got laid off. So everything that I had that was like in place became dismantled. So it's like I blew up my life. So I literally hopped in the car a week later with a duffel bag, 5 t-shirts, my dog, my road bike on the top of my car. No game plan, just a 6-day Airbnb stay. And that was, on the way to Del Mar, San Diego, North County. And that was 5 years ago. So I've never left. And that was the circumstance that led to like that blowing up my life. And it didn't feel intense. It just felt like this is the right thing, even though I didn't know what was next. But that's what happened to get me down here, to have me sit in that place of like, what's next? And I think the bigger theme was 10 years ago, before my stint back in tech in Silicon Valley, I had run my own business for 7 years. And because of that global recession, or whatever we want to call it back then, 2007, 2008, I had to close that business up. and I was running out of money, and I just could no longer do what I did. So I said, well, I'll go back to tech for a period of time. Didn't have a window, but I know this is not it. And then that happened, and that was it. So that's
what's interesting is I love having this conversation. I call it blowing up what you built. And, a lot of us as young men, we get out into the world and we have this thing that we're good at. We've got a skill set that we've been honing in on, or we went to school to learn something and we mastered that. And we jump into that career for the next 15, 20 years, and it makes a lot of sense to us. But for you, man, was there ever a point where you stopped loving the thing that you used to love?
Yeah, for pretty much the 10 years I was back in it, I didn't love any part of it. So it was more about just getting back into financial integrity, because I knew that I couldn't start a business again without having like something in the bank account. Because when it was fear-based, like, the basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like if I couldn't put food on the table, I couldn't start a business. So I said, well, okay, let's regroup. But yeah, the whole time it was just this inner conflict of, hey, I'm doing this to make money, and then what am I actually doing? I didn't see what was next, but I just knew that wasn't my end state. But it was pretty miserable the second time around.
I don't know if you can resonate with this statement, but I was at a stage in my career where I was at the absolute pinnacle of everything. We had the money we wanted, we had the house we wanted, the cars we wanted. We didn't say no to shit. We just kind of did whatever we wanted to do. And I can also draw a parallel line to like almost the most miserable I ever felt in my life. And I mention that because, like, listen, I grew up without a pot to piss in. My family was super blue collar, and there wasn't a lot of cash there. And there's a lot of people out there, Ray, that think when I get money in the bank account, I'll feel better. What do you think about that?
Well, I read a book a long time ago. It was called The Way of the Superior Man. And I think chapter 4, it says, and this is a book written for men. He said, there's a chapter was called Stop Hoping for Completion. And I never forgot it. And what that basically means is there'll never be the right time. Like, meaning when I have that $2 million nest egg, then I'll take that risk. When I have the perfect marriage, then I'll stop hoping for something to happen before you do you. And I've never forgotten that. Like, there's no perfect time. I mean, of course, starting a business, having some money in the background helps out, but there's a trap that a lot of us fall into, and I was guilty of that. I was waiting for some end state before I could take that next risk or jump into what was more meaningful. So stop hoping for completion is just sort of etched into my mind.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you're always on the journey. In the work that you're doing now, you talk an awful lot about helping people stop chasing that external validation. You talk about, I'm really good for people that feel stuck in old narratives and patterns. Can you, if you're comfortable getting vulnerable with me a little bit, what were some of your old narratives and some of your old patterns that you had to snap?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I read a book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And that means that, if you think about generational lineage trauma, if you've got really emotionally young, immature parents, and then they raise you, what often happens in that is you have a lack of sense of self, so at your core, even if you're successful externally, there's this deeper party. It's like, oh, I'm not enough as is. You got to prove yourself. So for me, a lot of it was, if I'm making money, if I have the $1.5 million house, I've got the cars, then I've arrived. But deep down inside, there was this like core belief that no matter what I have out there, there's still a part of me that doesn't believe any of it. Like, I'm still like this imposter waiting to be found out, so no matter what was going on outside, I still had this internal belief that they're never going to be enough. So that could never scratch that itch, so to speak, with all these external validation points.
Isn't that such an interesting thing? Because I suffered from a little bit of that too. And I suspect a lot of people did, right? Birth to young parents who didn't have a clue what they were doing. And so, they're just doing the best they can. Have you gotten to a point, either through your medicine journeys, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, or just through your own healing work, where you've come to grips with the folks that you were dealt?
Yeah, I mean, it's this place where it's been this long journey. I've been at this for 25 years, as far as, we'll just call it personal development, for lack of a better term. And that is therapy, men's circles, it's experiential retreats, it's psychedelic medicine. These are all just tools to help shed these old beliefs, these subconscious programs. And that's been the journey. And, for me, in that, I've actually became this, I call it self-leadership. It's no longer am I swayed by external circumstances, because much of life is uncertainty. So, but I've this place in myself where like I've arrived, there's nothing that needs to happen, nowhere need to be. And from that place, I've never been more creative, even though I don't have a 5-year business plan. I don't know what's going to happen a month. Who cares? Like what I do now is I have this North Star that I'm moving in this direction. And on that path where I'm headed, it's really about what does it feel like, or what's it sound like? And part of that path is like one part of it scares the shit out of me, excites me. And the other part feels really, really good and enlivening. So that's how I move through life now, but it comes from like letting go of all those things that are getting in the way, that emotional clutter, those beliefs, which, no one's fault. It's just, that's what it is. Your programming happens before you're 7. And so now as an adult, you get to like undo that programming to go back to your sense of self, your self-leadership, and what I've heard, termed wholeness, your sense of like this authentic self that wants to express in the world.
So we'll move into a little bit of the psychedelic space just for a couple of moments. The retreat that I experienced with you guys was a San Pedro experience. For the audience that has no idea what that is or what that's about, can you just give me your best description of San Pedro?
Yeah, San Pedro is a cactus native to Peru in the Andes Mountains, and it has an psychoactive ingredient called mescaline. And there's 2 kinds of cactus. There's peyote and there's San Pedro. And they call it the grandfather of psychedelics. Mushrooms are the grandchildren and ayahuasca is the grandmother. And so it's just really, it's been used for thousands of years, in ceremonial, for ceremonial purposes. And really, it's just really beautiful. It has a grounding element and heart opening element. It's about connection. And like the theme for the retreat, connection with the land that we're on, connection with this beautiful medicine, connection with other, and connection with nature. So it really helps quiet the mind, as you probably experience, and just drop into your heart and go, oh, here I am. And then from that place, connect with all the things I just mentioned. So that's what it is. Like to answer your question, that's what San Pedro is in my.
And we microdosed it. We didn't take a huge helping of it. Again, just to kind of help people get their head around what happens and how it's typically used. We took it in capsule forms. There was a proprietary blend that we used. But how is it typically consumed? In tea? Do you smoke it? Do you swallow it? Do you chew it? Like, how do people typically? For those that don't know?
You go to a gumball machine at Walmart.
That's it.
That's it. No, it's typically consumed liquid format, which it tastes pretty pungent and nasty, but it's also done in pill format. It's not as prevalent with pills, and that's my friends developing that line. But I've usually drink it. And usually go with a bigger dose. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just again, I'm just trying to lay some foundation before we get into this conversation. We took a microdose, which you would describe as what versus like a full on dose. And then I'm going to follow up that question, what would be the differences for people? So let's start with the microdose. We took that, which helped me understand how much was ingested.
Yeah, just higher level micro versus macro. A microdose is subperceptual, meaning you're not going to see visuals. You're going to be completely functional. You could drive a car, maybe not in the dose that we did, but you're certainly functional, but you're just a more aware and present. So if you're a sushi connoisseur, you go to a sushi restaurant, you order this big platter, you got 4 or 5 rolls, you've got sashimi, you've got nigiri, and you take just one piece of sushi from that platter. That is a microdose. A macrodose would be like, oh, I've had 4 or 5 rolls and I'm certainly not driving anywhere. So that's a microdose. And then it just depends if you want to go small, medium, and large with that microdose, which we talked about during the retreat. But it's the basic function is you're not in your own world, you're still in the world. And a macrodose tend to be more of an inward journey if you're doing psychedelics for optimizing performance or healing or getting clear on your purpose. That's usually the microdose or macrodose category.
Okay. So why would somebody want to take a micro, and what would be the benefit of a macro from your experience?
There's not a lot of clinical research on microdosing. Paul Stamets is a leading mycologist. You may have seen the movie Fantastic Fungi. He was also referenced in Michael Pollan's book that really reignited the psychedelic renaissance, How to Change Your Mind. He talks about it. But Paul Stamets did a microdosing study on psilocybin. And that's really the first of its kind that came out. And people often report inner peace, more creativity, feeling more grounded, just feeling themselves more. And I've heard it even called a spiritual vitamin. Again, these are anecdotal and not in his research paper. It calls out some of that. But for me, I'm just more connected to myself. And it's like, oh, there I am. I'm not in the mental clutter of my head. I'm not in the past. I'm not in the future. I'm here right now. And music sounds a little bit more crisp, and I just feel
colors
more
look prettier.
alive.
Yeah,
but not in a way where it's like, whoa, why is that bush turning into a dragon? Not that way. But it's just an enough amount that you notice it's there, but it's in the background. It's not taking you out of the experience where you can go to dinner with friends, you can go to a concert. The music just sounds a little bit more crisp. So it's very functional at that. We took a little bit more than that for what we were doing, but there's just different stages of microdosing, different doses.
Okay. Listen, I think it's one of the better descriptions that I've ever heard of it. And, I've been microdosing myself with a variety of different things for years. And that's the way I explain it to people. It's like, if you take an SSRI for your depression, it's not like, you feel the drug happening. You just sort of notice that, like, okay, whoa, I wasn't as depressed today, or I wasn't as sad today, or I wasn't as this today. And when I microdose, be it cannabis or psilocybin or San Pedro, as I've experienced with you, it's just kind of running in the background. And if you key into it as it starts to kind of like open up in your body, you're like, what's that? But it's not enough for you to, like, as you said, take over your life and do all of these things. And so I want to ask you a personal question, and then I want to get to some of the leadership that you do. Mm-hmm. You've had several journeys, it sounds like to me. I don't know you, all that well, but it sounds like you've had several journeys along the way. Can you tell me from your perspective, which one of the medicines, psilocybin, San Pedro, ayahuasca, some of these other ones that maybe you've experienced, what has felt the most true for you in your body?
Most true for me in my body. I think about psychedelics as a toolbox, right? And in the toolbox, you've got a hammer, you got a screwdriver, you got different tools. I'm just making this up as I go. But when I first started doing psychedelics or working with psychedelics, it was 2005 in Peru, and that was a hammer. It was ayahuasca, and and like I got the hammer like in the center of my forehead. I got into my temple. I got it in my gut. Like, it was abrupt, jarring, very beautiful too. But it's the first time I felt this sense of unconditional love. I didn't know what love was. Love was always codependence. Love was always, it had hooks in it. I never knew. So I had a sense of like this unconditional love that I had heard about. So, but it was a hammer. Like, you come home from Peru, you're like, what the fuck just happened? How do I make sense of that? Why did I see a condor flying over Incan ruins? And was that me, the condor? So it's hard to make sense because it's basically 500 channels like cable TV happening simultaneously. And then you're like, have to remember that. So it's called the spiritual rotor. So it's a very big tool, sledgehammer. Some people would argue with that. And then there's others that are lighter. I've heard it expressed as a lotus flower. So if you look at the soil, that's things like ketamine, MDMA. You go up the stem, that is things like mushrooms, LSD. And then the flower itself, much more like the Super Bowl psychedelics, that's DMT, whether it's the kind you smoke, which is the toad, or just true DMT or ayahuasca. So more gentle all the way up to super visual and more intense on the body. So different tools for different use cases. So I think they've all been a blend that have served me, that felt true. And I would say too that they're not for everyone, and they're just a tool. Like, if you do psychedelics as a standalone, thinking it's the quick fix button, not a good strategy. Like all the things you do to learn to know yourself, whether it's therapy, experiential workshops, the Hoffman process, or it's a tool that you use along the way as an accelerant to help you see yourself more clearly. You could take the elevator or you could take the stairs. The therapy is sometimes the stairs and psychedelics are the elevator, but together they're a really powerful combination to help you really get to know yourself. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And it just, I'm asking, I mean, I know a lot of this stuff, but I'm asking on behalf of people that don't, and because I want to give them a really good, clear understanding. And so far, Ray, you've done just a fantastic job of explaining the process and why it would be beneficial and why you would choose one over the other. So thank you for that. Here's the question for you. When it comes to leadership, and I know you're working with, executives, you're working with people that are running big companies or high performers or high achievers. Why do you think psychedelics might be a tool they should reach for?
Yeah, that's something I'm in the middle of. Like I was culling through 25 pages of testimonials. Most of the work I do, of course, is, underground. And so I look at the 25 pages of testimonial, look for some of the core themes. And most of these high achievers have gotten to this level of success and they're like, oh, I'm on top of the mountain. Is this it? Like there's something itching inside and they want more. And what I'm hearing is they want more connection and more emotional freedom. And the word freedom keeps coming up over and over again. And so much of success is habitual, it's patterned, it's overcompensation. I'm over-indexing on success because that's how I've been rewarded. Whether it's school, college, athletics, or your program with your parents. So success becomes this thing in the background that's driving you, but it's not this internal contentment. And oftentimes I hear leaders say like, well, who am I? I'm successful, but who am I really? And that's where these things come in because when you do psychedelics in a safe way, the set and setting that Michael Pollan talks about, you get to experience yourself without all the noise, without success. Like you get to be in the room with yourself like, oh, there I am. Is this really me? Or is this some program? Is this some version of me that is just an adaptation to circumstances external to me? So I say people come to this work for clarity, for perspective, to experience themselves in a way where when neuroplasticity happens, other parts of your brain come on that normally don't in your rational brain. And it sort of just flattens your prefrontal cortex to dumb it down. And then parts of your brain come online and go, oh, you solve problems that were not solvable before with your own mind because it's expanded state. So that's the beauty of it. But I, to go back to your question, it's really about emotional freedom, authenticity, deeper connection with self, with their family, how they run their business. Like I had a CEO that came to work with me, 6'5", 250. And at the end of our retreat, his wife was picking up. He's like, can I get a hug? And I'm like, sure. We talk about more. He's like, can I get another hug? Like, I mean, how cool that two men in front of his wife, he hasn't known me a long time, wanted to hug. Like that's the thing that's possible. And now he sees he's like, I'm going to send 10 of my friends to you because he experienced something himself. He built this multi-billion-dollar company and still yet he knew there was more and didn't know what more was, but had this yearning. I think a lot of people that are successful sometimes go like, what? Or what happens if that goes away? Like Major League Baseball players I work with at the end of his career, what do I become a State Farm agent? Like what's next? So there's that internal yearning that you may not have the words for it, but there's more. And
yeah, and it's such a truth for guys. Sorry to cut you up, but it's such a truth for guys, isn't it? Right? Like you say, who are you? And they tell you what they do. And it's like, no. I don't care what you did. Who are you? Like, who is Ray, the man? Is he caring? Is he sensitive? Is he like, that's what I'm looking for when I say, who are you? What are you about? Like, what is important to you? I can answer that question because I think I want to ask you the same one. But, for me, when somebody says, who are you? I say, I'm the transitional character in my lineage. I am the one who is sent here to end the dysfunction, to break cycles for future generations and make sure that everybody with the last name Blades looks different moving forward. That's who I am. And so I'll challenge you with the same question, Ray. Who are you?
That is an ever evolving answer for me. But what it is right now, it's I've reached this level of self mastery that feels very spacious. So from that place, I'm possibility. And what I've discovered about myself is not to be, but I'm a leader of leaders. Not that I've had more success in the external world, but I help people with self-leadership because I've done it myself. So I've transmuted this deep pain, all this programming, and I've freed myself from those shackles. And from this place, I feel like this version of myself that I never knew possible, that's creative, loving, expansive, supportive, part Sherpa, part mentor, part advisor, part thought disruptor. I fuck with people's thinking. I challenge their beliefs. 1 minute I'm holding them in their vulnerability. The next minute I'm saying, I don't buy that shit you're saying. It doesn't feel true for me in my body.
Right. I love that.
It's just, so I'm expressed, I'm unfiltered, I'm unabashedly myself. I'm not trying to prove myself to anyone. I don't really care anymore. Not that I'm trying to be arrogant, but I have a sense of self now where I'm just here to serve. It's all about contribution, helping others contact that self-leadership, that place of true wholeness and authenticity. And I'm having fun. I'm fun and playful. And I didn't realize that. I cleared all this emotional clutter. I'm like, oh shit, I'm having fun, more fun than I've ever had in my entire life. I'm more creative. So I'm creative, fun, playful, loving, fierce, gentle. And, I do a lot of different things, and it's cool. It's like a portfolio career and I have no job description. It's super cool. I
had this guy on my podcast one time, Ray, who was he's a remarkable human being, Dr. John Schufelt. And for those who don't know, go back and listen to the episode. And this guy, he has done it all. He's actively, he's an ER physician. He's a healthcare operator and owner. He's a pilot. He is a member of the SWAT team. He is on a couple of different board of directors. And I remember sitting down with him and to give everybody the visual, I go to him to interview him. And his office is literally in a hangar on Scottsdale Air Park up in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so you walk into his office and what you see is, yes, he's got his Tesla that he drove there and he parks there. But then he's also got a private plane that he flies himself. And he's got a helicopter depending on where he needs to go. This dude literally, you talk about some next level shit. This is next level shit. And I remember sitting down and asking him, I said, man, I'm reading your resume of all these things that you do. When people, you go to a party and people say, what do you do? I'm like, what the fuck do you tell them? Because it's a million different things that you do. And I'll have to go back and listen to his answer, but he's similar to you, had just come up with a series of words that he uses now to describe himself. And, when you give me your list, man, some of the stuff that stuck out was, guide, facilitator, connector, mentor, servant. That is you. You've done a great job of, I think, depicting who you are right here, right now. And so the reason that I wanted to walk through this little exercise is because I think it would be a good one for other people to spend some time with, to have a meditation on, to just go get quiet for yourself and figure out who are you? What are you about right now? And the reason that that's important is because I think once you land on, okay, look, I'm a guide, I'm a facilitator, I'm a connector, I'm fun, I'm a mentor. Now you can kind of fully step into those roles. And I'll bet that's what you help some of these dudes and women, for that matter, who feel a little bit lost or a little bit disconnected. That's maybe a better way to say it. Start to feel a little bit more connected to self. So the question that I'm forming as we go through all of this is, For folks that work with you and they use psychedelics to help them step outside of themselves to discover who they are, can you share, without getting too personal and divulging too much information, but some of the transformations that you've witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, I had a recent client who 3x'd his business last year. He's an entrepreneur, and he came to me. He was doing some therapy with his wife, and they were in this question of like, are we a good fit? So he had that uncertainty around relationship. They've got 2 small kids. His business is going really well, but like personal life, not so well. So he started doing men's work, which that's a whole other conversation. And he was doing therapy. And even in that, he's like, I can't really get my head around this. So we met for coffee and just talked. And after our conversation, he's like, this is it. This is what I want to explore. And what he explored during one of these retreats is he not only explored his current situation, seeing his kids and his wife, having empathy for her childhood, what she went through. He was actually in the delivery room watching his wife being born. And he saw the parents and how they were with her. He's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But he went back to his lineage. He saw his grandparents, and he reconnected to one of his grandparents that was a spy at one point. Like there was a book written about him. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm this adventurer, so he connected to his lineage, saw his wife in a new light, and saw the places where he wasn't feeling enlivened and full in his life. He was slotting into a role that even though he 3x'd his business, it was like something still felt flat inside. But once he connected to his lineage, he gave a keynote. He had his top clients come in from all over the country, and he did a keynote for the group to kick things off. He said he was so in his heart, so in his body, that he got a standing ovation. And he started tearing up. He's like, I've been working with this group of people for over 10 years, and I never got anything close to that. So he's reconnected to his passion, all of himself, saw the role he was playing with his wife. And I've sat with both of them. And now they're not sure about where things are headed for them, but they're both on their way. And it may be the other way, but they're doing it in a very loving, collaborative way. He's excited about his business. And so he's just now, oh, here I am. So what's possible from this place? And he's still in that question. But he's excited about what lies ahead. And he's not in fear. He's like, it's all just going to happen the way it's going to happen. So that was one example. So cool. Then I had a Major League Baseball player who kept getting injured year over year. And we started diving into like, well, let's go back to what it all started. Let's talk about mom and dad. And he found out that he moved a lot as a kid. And he had these gut issues from all that moving around, that uncertainty and stability. And he's like, his mom would always say, oh, shake it off. Shake it off. Don't worry about it. Here's have some ice cream. And that kept persisting, but they never really took care of his emotional needs. And then one time he broke his arm. And for 3 days, they're like, oh, you're fine. Just put some ice on it. Didn't even trust that his arm was broken. So finally got treatment. But fast forward to a 30-something-year-old baseball player, when he would be rehabbing from an injury, because he didn't trust his body, his mom and dad didn't trust his body, so he didn't. He would go back in before he was fully healed and injured again. So he worked on his resentment towards his parent. I would even say hatred, his anger, resentment, and he started to trust his body. I talked to him a bit ago, and he made it through a whole season without getting injured. So yeah. And he's like embraced his parents and loved them for who they are. And he's got boundaries now. I'm not going to tell them everything about me because they can't keep their mouth shut. But so he's now like had a second kid. He's thinking about what's next after baseball, but he's in a really good place with it, That's so and the cool. CEO I just talked to today, working for a year, he started a company, a startup. For 16 years, he ran it. And then one day the board said, you're no longer CEO anymore. And they pulled him out of his role. And for the last year, he's been trying to figure out what's next. And we went from him moving through the world in his control patterns. Like I do a lot of IFS parts work, which is a whole other conversation. But I had him see that his fear and all these control patterns that came in, the way he was interviewing was abrasive, sharp, hungry, needy. And he kept pushing people away and overprescribing his medicine for people like, oh, here's the way you fix that problem without actually. So we had a call this morning and he finally is in this place of self energy where he's present. And now people are coming. Hey, that's a great idea. Could you fly to Europe for an interview this next week? Like he's now being more of himself because of all this work with the psychedelics and the coaching combined with last year. Now he's in this place of stillness, which I was like, who am I talking to today? He's a different human. And he's like, I am now creating opportunities not by efforting and doing, which is what high achievers do, get shit done. But he's just receiving and just being who he is. And he's like, paradigm shift.
That's amazing. Those are just two incredible illustrations, Ray. And because they, the beauty of storytelling is other people see themselves in other stories. And both of those were just incredible. My experience with the San Pedro, and then I'm going to lead you to another question, was I was shown some clarity at the retreat. I don't even know if you and I had a chance to download about this, but for me, it was like I was shown that like you're on the right path. Just keep going. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to change anything. Nothing needs to evolve. Like you're absolutely where you're supposed to be. Just keep marching. Just keep going. Do you think that there are people who are scared of psychedelic medicine because of what it might show them?
Yeah, yes. And also I had an entrepreneur who said he's afraid to lose his edge. If I do healing, my edge is my dysfunction. My childhood dysfunction is my differentiator in the marketplace. So if I soften that edge, then who am I? I may lose that edge. But I did a keynote last year on psychedelics and leadership, and I addressed fear head on. When I've done talks for even entrepreneur organization groups, like a bunch of presidents in the room, that was the biggest thing is like, because a lot of people either from the 60s and 70s remember like, oh, I'm going to jump out a window, I'm going to jump in front of a car, or there's tainted medicine, or my brain might get fried, like that commercial, like this is your brain on eggs like, so people have a fear that something's going to happen or the medicine's tainted. And most people's experience is someone who took mushrooms at a concert. Someone gave them a pile of them. They took them. They're like, oh shit, this is too much. I'm with 1,000 of my best friends and I'm overwhelmed. So, so fear is a big thing that keeps people from going it because it's a Schedule I drug. Even though mushrooms have been around ceremonially for 7,000 years, ayahuasca 20,000 years. But because us as a country, 300 plus years old, we're saying it's a Schedule I, it's a drug. We're just counting all these thousands of years of people using them in ceremony for healing, for clarity of purpose, for going to get well, like get out of your disease in your head, overthinking to go back home. So if people can, like one thing I would recommend people that have fear around it is watch that Netflix series, How to Change Your Mind.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. And then what I do when I work with someone, before I even sit with them, I put them through 14 hours of programming, videos on neuroplasticity, on the science of psychedelic, what happens in your mind, Huberman, Rick Doblin, all these luminaries in the field, so that when they finally do sit with it, they have all this new information that allows them to relax, saying, this can actually help me. So education is the first step to get over the stigma, government-led, pharma-led, like, all the stigma. And then a bad experience recreationally, oh, hell no, not for me, So drug to medicine, education, awareness, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, it's so clear to me as we kind of wind down our time with you that this would be it is such a useful tool for people. And, here on Learn from People Who've Lived It, we've done 300 plus interviews and we've probably done, a couple of dozen or so on psychedelics. And there's been some really, really beautiful stories that have come out of the psychedelic medicine. And you just said something like a couple of seconds ago that kind of got me thinking about this. It's like, it sort of gets you out of your own way. It allows you, and we can call that ego, right? It takes that ego and it says, can you slide to the side really quick so we can see what's really going on here? Yeah. And there's just so much beauty in discovering those. Should everybody go chase a psychedelic journey tomorrow? No, I don't think it's for everybody. It's not like you have to be called to the medicine. That to me is the beauty of it. And to me, that starts with, hey, I'm interested in this Netflix documentary. And then you watch it, and then you're watching it and you're going, I don't know, man, maybe I should try that. Like, to me, that's how the medicine kind of calls people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I had people I worked with for a year as their coach and advisor. And then the CEO's father had taken his life Christmas Eve. He's like, he reached out saying, I don't need coaching, but that thing you do with psychedelics, I think I'm ready for that. And so he flew me out to live on his farmhouse for 4 days. And I worked with him, his wife, I hung out with his kids. I worked in the garden. We fed the animals. We went cold plunging in the river. I immersed myself in their family and became part of them and got to hold the husband and wife as they grieve the loss. I mean, his father lived on the land with him. His mom's still there. So it was right for him after a year. He knew what I did, but for a year he sat with it. And I've seen that over and over again. People talk to me. It starts with a 45-minute just consultation, answer your questions. And then it could take 6 months, a year before they come back. And that's perfect. Take your time, make sure it's the right way. And I'd say for anyone exploring that, whether I'm your guide or someone else, it's really critical to have set and setting and to work with guides who have done their work. Like you've been sitting with psychedelics for 2 years. And now you're a guide. You're not my guide. Like, I want to know that someone's done their work and they help me approach it safely, effectively, because psychedelics is only 1/3 of the equation. It's the preparation, the journey itself, and then the integration. And that's a whole other story. But if those things are possible, this can be completely transformative and safe and effective.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, it's clear to me, Ray, that the work you're doing is right on tap with who you are and what you're all about. And, that's very obvious. I'm going to read you back some of the words that you read to me just a minute ago. Unfiltered, servant, fun, masterful, guide, facilitator, connector, mentor. Actually, I think I put in facilitator because I think that you do a good job with that. But of those 5 or 6 or 8 words or whatever that is, which one stands out right now?
Whew. Damn, that's a tough question. I think today it's playful. I think
good.
That's the one that I've been holding. Like, I've just been so much more playful and expressive. So that's what that's my answer.
All right. For folks that want to work with you, we're going to link to everything in our show notes. What's a good first step to working with Ray?
A first step is a conversation. That's where I sit with you. It's very informal like this. And you say, like, why are we talking? What has you interested in this work? And it may or may not be the right step, but I answer all their questions. I take them through the process. And if at the end of those 45 minutes, it feels like a good next step, then I give them the information on the portal and they spend a month with it, 2 months with it, 3 months with it. So it's really a conversation like this. And then it goes to like all the educational material, which is like 14 hours or so of stuff in there. So it's just a conversation. Let's just drop in, get real. No agenda. I'm here to answer your questions.
Love it, man. Ray Brejcha, thank you so much for your time today, pal.
Thank you.
Well, what I wanted to do was, after we got done talking with Ray, I thought, how great would it be if we brought in somebody else who was a part of that experience this weekend? And Anthony and I were 2 seats away from each other for most of the day. We didn't have a chance to look into each other's eyes, which I'll explain here in a couple of minutes. But we did, I thought, had a really meaningful conversation on the hike. And you were one of the guys that I connected with on several different ways. I mean, both of us have lost our fathers way too young, which is kind of a core connection, I think. But first up, man, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending a couple of minutes with me. How are you feeling today? How are you doing after that whole experience?
Certainly. Well, thanks for having me here, Matthew. I truly appreciate you and the rest of the folks I met that day. How am I doing? So in the last 4 days, I went home that night to my wife after the hike up in the hills, and the conversation flowed for hours, 3 or 4 hours. And to be fair, that's something that's pretty rare with us, very rare, in fact. And she was like, "You're just open to anything and everything. You're being vulnerable." And I was very tired. I slept 10 hours. Slept a ton the night after that. And I really, I wouldn't say I wasn't expecting much from the day. I thought it'd be maybe a little bit lighter and not as heavy. But hey, I mean, good things come to those who persevere. So it was definitely a lot, when we took the sacred medicine, and then the second dose, especially for me.
That's great. Well, and we're not here to air people's personal business, but the day was about connection. And, I admitted to you some connection issues. You talked to me about some of your connection issues. Did you feel like, the way that Ray was describing it at the podcast, did you feel like it opened up your heart to find more connection with the people that you wanted to?
Completely. If I go to a lunch with people, if I go to a business meeting, do I really open up? Not much. Do they? Probably not much either, just due to who I'm being, right? So I'm here to take that ownership that I haven't been the one who's been vulnerable in the past. And we walked away from that meeting and everybody exchanged contacts with everybody and was completely great with it. Not for a one-time thing, not for a business transaction, but to be essentially brothers, to continue to be vulnerable with and open up with our biggest issues. Like you and I talked about many things, including family and fathers that have passed. And I just had never heard a perspective like yours. So I was like, oh man, this guy, Matthew, thinks of things differently than people I talk to. People might think, oh, someone died right in front of me, it ruined the rest of my life. And a lot of people let that happen to them, right? And you obviously let it happen for you. And I love your narrative. And obviously it's taken a lot of work, but it was super inspiring for sure.
I want to ask you specifically about the two medicines that we took. The first one was San Pedro, and then the second one was I think they call it a Hopi or Hope. Is that right? Hopi?
I think it's Hape, but it
Hape. You're right. You're
very
right.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found the San Pedro to be very gentle, very just nice, beautiful, blissful. Like I really enjoyed the day. I found myself just in an incredible headspace. What was your experience with it? Was it similar?
It was similar. It was relaxed. I did feel it, and they said it took a couple hours 1 to 2 hours to kick in. I don't know the point that it kicked in. It took a while though, and I don't know the point of when it kicked in. Probably when we started really hiking. We went up to that first vista up on the little knoll top with all the grass and trees and actually some of the San Pedro growing there, and that's when I really felt it. When we did the eye gazing with a couple different partners there, I got a little bit emotional there, just more than I would get day in, day out, 100% more. And then we went down to the creek, and I still continued to feel I was more keen on my feelings, more keen on just my heart being open, more keen on sharing with the guys around me, sometimes wanting to be a little bit introspective. But once we got into conversations, things came out that would not come out at the dinner table, would not come out for me normally.
Let me ask you about that. So yeah, there was a really cool exercise that Ray put us all through. We had a grouping of men there, and I think it worked out to be a pretty even amount. And so one group of men was staring toward the ocean, the other was staring toward the forest. And the prompt for us was to look at the guy in front of you and lock on the left eye. And he had different prompts for round one and for round two. Had you ever done any exercise like that before, where you looked into seemingly a stranger's eyes very, very intimately for a period of 3 to 5 minutes? Had you ever done anything like that?
I had done it one time, and it was actually the first time I've ever done personal development work. Turn back the clock to Landmark. When I took that, I don't know if you've heard of Landmark or EST. We did an activity like that. We didn't reveal a lot of personal, what came to mind right after with the gentleman in front of us. And then the next partner, we didn't do that after. We just did some eye gazing to really get into someone's character, to really empathize, right? That's what we did it for Landmark. That was the one time I've done it besides recently.
What was your experience like? Do you remember what you shared?
A couple days ago?
Yeah.
I do. So I had 2 different shares, and they're both with, people I just met, obviously, right, this past weekend. Yet in my mind, I knew they're high-performing individuals, at least from society's perspective. I believe I am too. And I'm like, wow, this guy's done this guy's done that. Wow. However, we just dropped in after doing the eye gazing, looking left eye to left eye. I shared that my partner gentleman shared that he's successful, ex-pro athlete, definitely walks the talk. And he's like, I'm not where I want to be financially. I've got a burden. I'm not there yet. It's tough having these 3 kids that I have, and I'm going to figure it out and work through it. That's something I don't share with anybody. It was really hard. So I share with them, I feel you, brother. I truly do. And, I understand the world is expensive. I've had some challenges the last 8 months. My company's had some huge challenges the last 8 months. So do I feel sound financially? Not where I want to be. So I wanted a little bit more about it, and I knew that he's going to continue and grow out of it. And I took away the same message, the same feeling of comfort and love and support that I don't get, like, really ever. So we took that away, him and I. So that's a deep thing that we both shared. Like, there is support. Just reach out. We're just a text away, right? All of us in this group, and we don't have to go it alone. So it was a huge burden that was like lifted off my shoulders.
Let me ask you this, man. And obviously this is just your opinion, but do you think a lot of men feel that inadequacy?
I don't think there's been a time in my life when I felt 100% adequate across the board. I believe so. I think it's a thing. I think it's an easy thing to not address because a lot of the time men are told to be stoic, just, brush it off, you'd be a tough guy. Don't even talk about it. You're good. Keep those feelings inside. So we're essentially made wrong. Or at least I've been made to feel that way, not by anyone saying that, just through society's message and by people around me not opening up. So I felt, I can't open up as well. I better just push it down, keep the emotions in check, and be pretty stoic most of the time.
That's great, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes just to kind of talk about your experience. I thought there'd be so much value in talking to Ray for a little while and then getting a chance to sit down with somebody who went through the experience to talk about their perspective and how it went through their eyes. How important was it, final question for you, but how important do you think it was for grown-ass men to get together in a space like this?
The utmost importance, I feel like. Unless someone really has a community that they go super deep with of men that they admire, which most don't, I did not have, it is completely important to be around people that I admire, that will drop in and be vulnerable, because that's something I'm wanting to work on. And everybody in the group did that. I'm not saying just some of them, all of them did that. So they brought it, which I felt very open and comfortable. And that's not something I will get day in, day out with many people at all. I'd say if someone doesn't have it, to definitely seek it out. And this group's been monumental for me, for sure.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People who lived it. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People who lived it wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People who lived it.